So what's up everyone, and welcome to another Warframe video. So the reason we're starting this video in the dojo in front of this tower is because this video will be covering the mechanics of trading. Now a while back we had a separate video that talked about how beginners can earn platinum through the trading of early prime items, and during the release of that video there were some comments that came back, especially by a gentleman named Adam Gaming, who requested a separate video that talked about the details of how to do a trade. So first of all, I need to apologize to Adam. It's been a while since you sent that request. I apologize it took so long. And second of all, I wanted to create this short video so that we could go over the basic mechanics of a trade. So before we begin, I do want to set up a disclaimer that I am not a master trader, and I do it mostly to keep myself going in the game. There are a lot of other people who are a lot better traders than I am. Also, since trading is a very personal thing, the techniques that I show here may not be the way you like to actually do your trading. So, take everything that you see here with a grain of salt, but I did at least want to bring out the methodologies of how I do my trade, as well as a few views on how trading, or the differences in some of the trading methodologies in general. So Mirage will be helping me out throughout this video, and so let's get started. So first, let's quickly go over the process of how to do a trade. Now, as most of you know, there are two basic methods for doing a trade. One, if you're in a clan, or if the other person is in a clan, you can use the actual trading booths that are in the clan dojo. And the second, if you're not in the clan, you could actually use the trading capabilities available at Maru's Bazaar. So in the first instance, either of the trading party, the buyer or the seller, can invite the other member to the clan dojo, and once both parties arrive, then the trading can begin. Now at that point, each party offers the item that was agreed to be traded. Now in this case, platinum is considered to be an item, so this is a trade, not a sale. Now the trade mechanics gives you two chances to accept the trade. The first is to accept what you offer is correct, and the second is to confirm that everything in the trade can go through. So make sure that you confirm everything in both situations. Now, if neither party has the availability of a clan dojo to do a trade, then you can do the trade or use the trade capabilities available at Maru's Bazaar. Now, if this is the first time doing a trade in her bazaar, then the best thing to do is to go up to Maru and ask her, since there are options that she provides you for learning how to do a sell or how to set up a buy in her bazaar. Now the actual trading part of the trade, even in her bazaar, is almost identical to that of what you do in the clan dojo. The difference is how you set up the trade, and as you can see here, you could set up a shop in her bazaar and showcase all the items that you want to sell. Now if you're a buyer, then you could walk around and window shop amongst all these different stores, and if there is something of interest, then you could start negotiating with the seller, and if everything looks good, then you can activate the trade capabilities of the bazaar. Now if you're playing Warframe on the PC, then you just hit Q and then you get all those animation options. But if you're in Maru's Bazaar, you also get this button that asks you whether you want to set up a shop. And if you decide and say yes, then what it will do is ask you to put the items that you want to spotlight. So in this case, let me put in Temple Royale and accept. And what that happens is, first of all, your character starts raising her hand like an idiot, and second of all, the people who are now window shopping will see the item that you wanted to actually trade. In addition to that, the bazaar has its own internal communication system, so you could post your sell onto that channel. Now the only thing is I don't think it's regulated the way the trade channel is, so try not to spam it by posting a lot, or you're just going to get a lot of hate messages coming at you. Now what's interesting is in addition to this, you still have access to the regular trade channel. So what you can do is you can also post a sell there. And if there's somebody interested, then you could just inform them that you are at Maru's Bazaar and to come over. On the other hand, if the other party is a clan member and wants to use their trading booth at the dojo, then you could ask them to send an invite and you can leave the bazaar and go meet them at their dojo. So it does give you some benefits of being able to use both the bazaar capability as well as the standard trade channel capability. The only thing is you do have to sit around in the bazaar for quite a bit of time to see if there's anybody who wants to buy there. Now, of course, you could always just be in your ship and use the trading capabilities in the trade channel, and when you find somebody of interest, then you could ask them to meet you at the bazaar. So there are options that you can use that doesn't limit you to having to stand around and keep your hand raised in the middle of the bazaar if you don't want to. Now, eventually, it turned out that somebody from the trade channel responded and wanted to buy the Temple Royale. So I invited that person here to the bazaar. They came over and we went through the standard trade mechanics. As you can see, the trading mechanism at the bazaar is exactly the same as that at the dojo. So you go through the same sort of steps, and like before, you should make sure that the other party has offered exactly what they were willing to offer before you hit the accept button. If you notice anything different in the amount that they're offering, then you should immediately privately message them to question that. But in this case, of course, the buyer offered exactly what I wanted, and so we went through with the trade. Okay, so that basically summarizes the mechanics of a trade, whether you do it in the clan dojo or at Maru's Bazaar. Now, I do know that a lot of people who start trading are always worried that they're going to get scammed during a trade, and DE has recognized the worry and has set up the trading mechanism the way it is to avoid and minimize any possibility of scamming. And so they've done a good job. If the other party tries to do any sort of bait and switch and tries to swap out anything that they initially offered in the trade mechanics, then the mechanics will go back to the original situation where you will have to confirm everything one more time. So they can't just go around offering something and then secretly trying to swap it out, because you will notice that when you see the buttons go from a green accept back to a blue request for acceptance. Now, a rare case where somebody may still try to scam you under those situations is if they ask you to swap something out or change something in your offering, which is minor, and while you're changing it, they swap out their offering. So initially, everything looks okay, and then you, of course, change something just due to their request, and then you see the blue acceptance button, and you think that it's become blue because you're swapping out your items. And so you don't realize that they swapped out their items at that point. So, for example, they may give you something like 20 platinum, and then they ask you to modify the mod in some way, such as, oh, give me an unranked mod instead of a maxed stance mod. And then while you're getting an unranked one, they swap it out for like 1 platinum. And so those things are rare, but they may happen. So just in case, again, they give DE gives you the final button of acceptance, and before you press that accept button, do a final review of what they're offering and make sure that everything is okay, especially if they request some change in your offering. So this finally brings us to the trading channel and how you can notify your offerings or requests in that channel. Now, I do know that a lot of new players find that trading channel to be quite overwhelming, and that prevents them from ever doing a trade. But it's relatively straightforward. The statements or the notifications that you see in there fall into three basic categories: the want to buy statements, the want to sell statements, and the want to trade statements. Now, although they are slightly different in the sense that the first one you're the buyer, the second one you're the seller, and the third one there is no platinum transaction, it's just the trading of items. The actual mechanics of the negotiations are exactly the same, so I'm not going to cover each one of these individually. Now, what I do want to differentiate is there are two basic methodologies that people use when they notify, and that really does reflect the way each person does a trade. So the two generalized categories are: the first is where the person actually puts up the price of the item right during the notification. So it's like want to sell a certain item for a certain amount of platinum. The second is where no price is brought out and you are asking other parties who are interested to send you a bid. Now, this falls into two categories, and there is no right or wrong in one category over the other. The only difference is again coming back how you are comfortable with what you want to do with a trade. So I'll go over each one of these in terms of pros and cons, and then that might be able to clarify how you want to do your trade. So in the situation where you disclose the price early in the notification in the trade channel, the biggest advantage for that is that it clarifies everything even before the transaction begins. Since you communicated what your terms for the sale are, then anybody who wants to buy from you can determine whether that price and the terms are acceptable for them to actually communicate to you. So by the time they communicate to you, you have some idea that they already accepted your price, and that makes it easier for the trade to go through. It also minimizes any confusion with regards to what the price is, since you do not have to go through any negotiations later on during the private messaging. And it also reduces any possible drama, since the buyer knows by the time they contact you whether the price is acceptable for them. They do not have to go through any hassle of private messaging you just to find out whether the price range is in a ballpark that they can accept. And this minimizes any rage that may come up due to the possibility of sticker shock, as well as the potential of their feeling that they wasted a lot of effort just to find out that the price was not even in the ballpark that they wanted. So the disadvantage of using this methodology is that you are locked into the price you set during your notification to the trade channel. So even if there is a buyer that would have been willing to pay more, because you notified the market of your price, the buyer will basically buy at that price. So that does potentially reduce the possibilities of maximizing the possible opportunities for that sale. It also does make you required to do the due diligence to find out what the market price of that item is, because if it's too low, you just don't make enough money out of it that you could have, and if it's too high, then nobody will buy from you, and then you will be constantly posting your notification with absolutely no interest coming to you. The final thing is that you may actually discourage buyers from ever contacting you if they see that the price looks high, even if you were willing to reduce the price. So if it's something where you are willing to negotiate, then since you've kind of locked in the price in your notification, people will assume that you're not going to buy for lower, and a lot of people may not contact you. There are a few who will and check to see if that is a firm price, but a good number of them will just look at the price and go, okay, we're not going to private message you. So these are some of the cons of using this methodology. So the other methodology is where you don't disclose the price during the trade channel and you go into negotiation during the private messaging. And the advantage of that is that, of course, you have the ability to negotiate and modify your price depending upon the response you get from the buyer. A lot of sellers will first ask the buyer for a bid, and depending upon what the bid is will determine how to respond or whether they want to respond to that particular buyer. So that does give the seller the little bit more flexibility to negotiate and change their price according to the response. The other thing is that depending upon if the number of bidders that comes in, seller may actually hold off and see if there's a price war that will go on between the buyers, and then they can window shop amongst the buyers and see which one is the highest bidder and go with that bidder. Some sellers will actually say that they're auctioning, and so they will notify all the other bidders what the highest bid is, and then see if any of the other bidders are willing to bid even higher than that. So there are many techniques that sellers can use using this methodology. And of course, if there is no good bid, then you could just hold off from selling. And so that does give the seller some flexibility in that situation as well. The final thing is, since you haven't really disclosed any price to the trade channel, there will be a lot of curious buyers who will come in, and so there is a ability to increase the probability of people who may contact you. Now, the disadvantage of using this method is that you do end up spending a lot more work in the private message negotiation phase, because neither party really understands what the other party is willing to offer, and that is where the private message negotiation starts. So it does take a lot more work in that interim side to come to terms. The other thing is that if you get a lot of bidders to come in, but not a single bid looks really good, and you spend a lot of time negotiating, then you may end up wasting a lot of time just talking to all these people. And I know a lot of people do not like trading just for that specific purpose, that they're getting a lot of stress and wasting a lot of time during this negotiation phase. And finally, since the actual terms of the transaction is not clarified during the notification side prior to the private messaging, a lot of buyers may come in thinking that the price can be a lot lower, for example, than what you're willing to accept, and then they spend a lot of time negotiating only to find out that they can't purchase it at their price. And that, of course, creates the potential for drama, for anger, for a lot of hate messages coming at you. And at that point, people who do use this methodology have to understand that they need to accept this sort of consequence because of the fact that you're not really providing the terms of the transaction prior to the negotiation. So it is a double-edged sword, and you take the bad along with the good. So in summary, if I was to give a brief description of the type of trader who might prefer one methodology over another, the first methodology, where you disclose the price, is probably preferred by people who do not want a lot of stress and strain in their trade, and they just want to go in, do a bid, or do a transaction and quickly get out. And there are a lot of people who don't like trading just for the sake of the stress, and if they want to minimize stress, the first methodology might be very good. And you take the consequence that you may not always sell at the highest price, but at least you minimize the drama. The second one, methodology, where you don't disclose the price, is really good for people who like to wheel and deal. They have the passion for and the hunger for going after a sale and maximizing the win in each of these transactions. And for those people, it is actually almost like a battle for them to see if they could get the highest price for every transaction they do. So in their case, it's not a stress. It's actually a highly enjoyable challenge to be able to go through that situation. So they take the consequence of having to do that work during the negotiations, and they also take the consequence that they may potentially create people who may get a little bit upset if the negotiations go south. And so neither of these transaction methodologies are perfect, but they do have their advantages and disadvantages. So the most important thing is not to assume that there is going to be a perfect method that will minimize stress and you could get the best possible price with very little work. That doesn't exist. The most important thing is to determine which methodology works for you the best of all, and understand that there are consequences associated with each. And that will definitely help reduce the stress, because you already understand what you have to deal with using one of these two methodologies. Okay, so this in a nutshell gives some of the information with regards to mechanics of a trade, starting from the initial notification of what you're offering in the trade channel, all the way to the actual transactions that you perform either at the dojo with a trading booth or at Maru's Bazaar. I would suggest that you will look into some of the other trading videos that are available, and if you are in the clan, talk to some of the elders in the clan. The other thing I will mention is that, of course, just like any other part of Warframe or a lot of these grinding games, the more you grind or the more you learn, the more it pays back for you. So if you spend some time in the trade channel understanding the prices, understanding the mechanics, the psychology of some of the people who are out there, it just makes things a lot easier. And one final suggestion I would say is, regardless of whatever happens, just be courteous to whoever you talk to. They may come at you and tell you that you're the biggest idiot in the world because you have a price for a certain item that they disagree with, and just say thank you very much for your comment, and you have a good day. And that usually, if they wanted to troll you, will discourage them and make them go away. If they really wanted to give you some constructive criticism, however harsh it is, then well, they'll at least feel like you appreciated it. Whatever the case, be courteous, be kind, and it just makes things a lot easier. Now, with regards to things that you can sell if you're a new player, aside from those prime items and some of the things I discussed in the first video, there are certain mods that you can go after that do drop sometimes in the early missions and can be tradable for platinum. Now, you'll eventually know which ones they are, because you'll find that you wanted them too, and it took a little bit of work to get them, so you can understand that it'll probably take a little bit of work for other new players to do so. Some of these mods include mods like Streamline, Flow, Intensify, Continuity, Constitution, many of these that actually enhance the capabilities of your frame, possibly your weapons, primary, secondary, and melees, and the things that you notice are not always easy to get. Usually they are the rare mods, and not all rare mods, but you do know which ones they are because everybody seems to want to get all the same ones, and some of them are not always easy to get. And those usually sell somewhere around 2 platinum to 5 if you want to sell something like Intensify, to something like maybe higher if you are lucky and get something like Rage. And so you could what I would do is just continue to enjoy the game and play it as it is, and as you keep on playing, keep an eye out for what you get in your mod inventory, and if something looks good and if you have more than one, then you might be willing to offer it for sale in the trade channel. Anyway, that's it for this video. We really appreciate the time you opened to watch it, and we hope you found it to be useful. If you have any comments, please post them in the comment section below, and I would appreciate any information you can provide. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to make these videos for you. We wish you all the best with the game as well as everything else, and as always, Jaya, nice day, everyone.